Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about Donald Trump's brief arguing for immunity in the DC circuit. All right, we are back after a couple days off, and this actually dropped over the weekend on the 23rd. And so recall the kind of crazy procedural posture we are in. Judge Chutkan, this is her case, has retained some control of the gag order and other administrative matters. The Supreme Court denied the Smith's request for cert before judgment, in other words, to leapfrog the DC Circuit. And I believe the reason they did so, and I'm not sure why others kind of missed this point, was because the DC Circuit had issued, after Smith had made this request, a very quick briefing schedule, like warp speed, showing that they're very much on the expedited plan that prevailed in, say, U.S. versus Nixon, and is there precisely because they know time is of the essence, precisely because of the exigency of having a trial occur well before, hopefully, the November 2024 election, so the voters can know the fate of one of the principal candidates. Even so, recall also that's now on hold. Time is really of the essence because the March 4th trial date is just going to give way sort of day for day until this immunity issue is decided. Immunity being the one issue that Trump has a right to decide before trial even begins, since it is an entitlement not to go to trial at all. If he loses this and in good time, then it'll come to Chutkan to just manage his different strategies for delay. And she's shown herself to be a pretty strong and decisive manager of the docket. So then I think it would be much harder for him to try to play for time the way he's doing successfully, say, before Judge Cannon. All right, so now the DC Circuit says we'll do this very quickly. You, Trump, give us your brief on the 23rd of December. Then you, Smith, respond to that on the 30th of December. In other words, this coming Saturday. Forget about Saturdays and Christmas and New Year's Eve. Everyone's working around the clock in this one. And then you, Trump, give your reply. That's how it works in an appeal. The appellant gets a final little say. And then we, the Court of Appeals, are going to hear the case on the 9th, just one short week after. And if they're on this kind of crazy sprint, it's likely that they're already going to have been beginning to write by the time the oral argument comes up. The panel, and the panel itself is a very unfavorable one for Trump, very favorable one for Smith. And in any event, by now, the claim on the merits for immunity has been really nearly decided in many different settings. So, notice what he's basically trying to say is, as long as I'm acting as president here, even the outer perimeter of my very broad presidential duties, I have immunity. And that's a pretty similar question as the courts have been confronting and asking, is the crime fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege met? Or is he should the Department of Justice step into his shoes for a defamation case? There are just different cases that bring up this notion of, was Trump acting as president or not? Or is there civil immunity for a president for the lawsuit filed by Eric Swalwell and others? So we already, I think, can see the writing on the wall pretty clearly. And the bigger risk here is not that he prevail in his immunity motion, but rather that he eat up enough time to really put him within shooting distance of getting over the hump for November 2024. He's still got a ways to go. All right. Nevertheless, so he files his big brief on the last Saturday on the 23rd, and he's making at least two main points. First, he says he has immunity, and there's been a little bit of sort of play and ambiguity between the parties about whether he's asking for absolute immunity. You can call this, shoot someone on Fifth Avenue immunity, even something that is clearly outside his official duties, as long as he was president. That seemed to be the terms before Chutkan, but his brief is very clear at saying, no, the issue is, am I within the outer perimeter of liability? So in other words, the pivotal judgment is, was I acting almost kind of close enough for government work to being the president? Now, that concept is established in the civil realm. If anybody sues the president for acts that she or he does while in office, that the president has immunity so long as, and this is what the courts will ask, was it within the outer perimeter? And the very notion of outer perimeter suggests a fairly expansive kind of test. So it's obviously an expansive test. It's really showing, go to the very edge, but the very edge of what? Your official duties. And here, the application is very much against Trump. For starters, from other situations in the civil realm, that a president who's acting as a candidate is not within his official duties. That is, the Constitution doesn't care if Donald Trump or Joe Biden wins the presidency. It just cares that things are done lawfully. So if Trump was trying to win the presidency as a candidate, he's at a stump speech or a campaign stop, that's not within the outer perimeter, even if everything's on the up and up. And of course, here, not only are things not on the up and up, he's, not to put too fine a point on it, trying to engage in an insurrection and overthrow the Constitution. So his argument, I think, is very unlikely to prevail. But what he's tried to do is an really almost laughable jujitsu on the facts. He's saying, the way he characterizes it in the brief to get there is, he was just trying to assure the election integrity of the process. Just calling around, how's everything going down there, everything on the up and up, etc. And that's something that's within a president's outer perimeter. Even that is very dubious, even if that were right. Why is it the president's business to make sure that, everything's proceeding like it's supposed to in Nevada? But you could maybe try to argue for general confidence of the people, et cetera. Except here, it's a fanciful, ridiculous, even offensive characterization of the facts. He's there not only not to look at election integrity, but to overturn or undermine election integrity by browbeating officials, et cetera, and lying about the facts and trying to make them overturn the people's vote and throw things into the House of Representatives, he hopes, where his people, his members, will do their job. Okay, so I think that is really set up to be lost in the Court of Appeals. I'll talk briefly about the Supreme Court in a moment, because he has one other big claim that he's bringing. He says he also has a right not to be tried in the first place. This is a ridiculous argument, but under the Double Jeopardy Clause, you do have a right, by the way, under the Double Jeopardy Clause. So that would be not to be tried. So that would be another thing that you get a stay for, to be sure, in advance. But why is that? It's because he was already tried and acquitted in the impeachment trial, in impeachment number 2. So, the idea is the Constitution prescribes impeachment, and now he's got a real problem, which is the impeachment clause says expressly, it kind of expresses a preference for impeachment as the right remedy to get a president out, but then says, so, don't worry that the criminal president will escape criminal justice, because it says in the very clause, but thereafter you can also be tried and convicted in the courts. So that's a very awkward provision for someone who's trying to say that just being tried and acquitted means you can't be tried in the courts, if somehow justice isn't done. And that's because it's not a double jeopardy provision at all. Indeed, it provides, if he were right, it provides automatically for double jeopardy. You're convicted and then indicted again under his way of thinking about it. That's because impeachment is not a criminal remedy. It's importantly not a criminal remedy. It's a political remedy, and it says nothing whatsoever and erects no possible bar to the subsequent criminal prosecution. So that one is a kind of, almost laughable afterthought that'll give no court any trouble at all. Okay, so I think we can expect the Court of Appeals to make both these holdings by, let's say, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, the 15th, but shortly after. A typical appellate decision would take several months, but they are really going to be pedal to the metal on this. And now will come the big question of what happens next and how much more delay he can squeeze out of this. We'll talk later when it comes up about how the court's likely to handle things and what its mindset will be. The big question I just want to close on here is the one of how long he can stall. Because in theory, when you lose an appeal in the Court of Appeals, you can go to the full Court of Appeals and say, think about it again. And then you have 90 days to ask for cert. And he could take 4 or 5 months just in asking people to, the courts above to review. However, the Court of Appeals has a pushback against this. You wouldn't normally be so interventionist as this, but I think they know it's a really unusual exigent situation with real policy, implications for the people. So here's something they can do, and this will be when I see the opinion come out, I'll very quickly scan to see that it affirms, but then go to the very bottom. Because if they can grant a short stay this is what the Colorado Supreme Court has done in the 14th Amendment Section 3 case. They can say, we'll stay this so you can rush up to the Supreme Court, but for 10 days, 14 days. And after that, the stay expires, meaning if he hasn't done anything, immunity has been decided, and he's back before Chutkan. So it would force his hand, if they'll do it, to get to the court quickly, and then he would have to ask the Supreme Court, to extend the stay and start that process, which we also hope and have some reason to think they would do very shortly. Okay, so look, there's now 2 games going on with every Trump motion. The merits of it here, the double jeopardy, ridiculous, 1 out of 10. The immunity, not ridiculous, but a loser, 3 out of 10, whatever. And then the delay game, and that's where he's winning temporarily because it's immunity. And the question will be, after, assuming I'm right, that he loses in the DC circuit, what will they do to try to force him to finish out the process quickly? And will they, in fact, impose a sort of, short circuiting stay? That'll be the determining factor, or the next big determining factor, for whether the trial gets pushed back 45 or 60 days or 75 days or something that's a fair bit more, even one that risks actually having the trial not go forward this year. So that'll be the dual focus. What will they do in particular, though, with the stay of their decision? Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.